Hello, let's look at a whole bunch of fruits and vegetables under a microscope camera. Yes, that's literally the whole video, and I'm so excited. We're sponsored today by Squarespace. Follow me in. So we're starting with broccoli, and we get in close here, and it kind of looks like a whole bunch of Brussels sprouts, because that's basically what it is. Brussels sprouts are buds, and these are buds, flower buds. If you don't harvest broccoli on time, you will get it blooming into these very pretty little yellow flowers, but it starts to taste very bitter at that point. Cauliflower, another brassica, just like the broccoli, just like cabbage. They're all cultivars of the original wild cabbage, which grew on limestone cliffs around Europe. So superficially, cauliflower looks a lot like broccoli, but these are not flowers. What they are is a tissue called meristem, basically a stem cell, a plant stem cell, kind of a blank cell just ready to be turned into anything the plant needs it to be. And then we have the romanesco, which is super pretty. It's another kind of cauliflower. And what's cool about them is that they grow in these fractal patterns, so it looks like a castle. Artichoke, along with capers and the broccoli, it's a flower bud that we eat, one giant bud. And it's a thistle, so you can see the thorn at the tip of each one of these leaves, called a bract. A bract is a kind of leaf that grows as part of the flower. Those inner leaves you can eat whole, assuming the plant is young enough. Over here you can see the heart. That's sort of the part that people really like, going into the stem. And then here's the part that everyone is scared of. This is the choke. The choke is the actual immature flower petals, which kind of isn't super pleasant to eat. Lettuces. Lettuces are not just like tender cabbages. They are the leaves from members of the daisy family. Here, if I light it from behind, you should be able to really see what we're talking about. Those are the lateral veins, which make up sort of the circulatory system, delivering water and nutrients and everything, going to the midrib, which is the kind of central vascular system that runs up through the middle of each leaf. See the edges there kind of starting to decay. Look at a red leaf variety. Generally, whenever you see anything purple or red or blue in fruits and vegetables, it's these chemicals called anthocyanins. Anthocyanins, scientists think, might play some role in protecting plants or leaves in particular from cold stress. Whatever this guy has some pretty interesting vascular system going on. Let's move on to herbs. Yes, Brits, everybody drops the H in herbs in North American English. It's not just me. In botany, an herb is like a leafy plant that does not have a woody stem. In a culinary sense, herbs are just like basically any plant, or a leafy plant, that has a really strong taste, so strong that you kind of wouldn't eat it just by itself. You use it to flavor other things. And here's parsley, which is a member of the Apiaceae family, Apiaceae. I'm not sure how you say that, but it's the same family as carrots, and coriander and dill and cumin, a whole bunch of things. That was flat leaf. This, of course, is curly parsley, which, I don't know, does this only exist to be sort of a sad little garnish alongside omelets? It just doesn't taste as strong as the flat leaf variety. It's just sort of pretty, it stands up on the plate, and it's hearty. It doesn't wilt easily. Good for a food service environment, right? A giant member of that same Apiaceae family as the parsley is celery, of course. You can tell that just by looking at its leaves, and the leaves are actually like a delicious herb. Of course, the main thing that we eat with celery is the stalk, which is basically just a giant swollen petiole, the sort of stem that immediately attaches to the leaf. And if you look back on the look over at the parsley, that's the petiole there too. It's just a much more reasonable size. We cut it open, we can see. And so those big circles are the xylem and the phloem, you know, the circulatory system. Xylem up and phloem down, my dad always used to say to help me remember which was which. Going back to the herbs, here's thyme, which is a different family. This is the mint family. That includes like basil and sage and salvia and oregano, lots of stuff like that. Interesting, I never noticed the little hairs that seems to be on thyme. You see it on the stems especially. You see hairs much more prominently on sage, which is part of the same family. Those little hairs are called trichomes. You know, those look exactly like sage leaves when you look at them under the microscope. In the case of herbs, the trichomes might be glandular, meaning that they actually like secrete essential oils that make the plant taste the way it does to us. Speaking of trichomes, we can move right along now to fruits. Fuzzy peaches, these are trichomes. Fuzz apparently plays like a lot of roles, especially like a little umbrella. It kind of holds water up and away from the surface of the fruit, which would sort of keep it from getting infected with funguses, I suppose, that kind of thing. While at the same time, it retains a layer of water up above the fruit, which keeps it from drying out. Kiwi is the same deal. Not all the varieties are fuzzy, but the ones we see in the States are usually quite fuzzy. Another potential function of the hairs is to repel bugs, like spikes in like a retaining wall where they don't want people to sit on it, right? The spikes would just get in your way if you were a little bug. Cut it in half, see those pretty little seeds? You can see them each attached to the placenta. That's what the white thing in the center, that little kind of pipe or vein connecting the placenta to the seed, but you can see it really clearly there, look at that. Also hairy, but a different kind of hair, is raspberries. In this case, the hairs are styles. Remember that all fruits come out of flowers. That's what makes them fruits. And so that's basically a remnant of the flower peeking through there. Like a finer hair on each of the drupelets. That's what those little bags of juice are called, drupelets. Each one contains a seed. I want to look right down the chasm. Oh, that looks like something out of Alien. Staying with berries, let's look at grapes. And what I'm interested to see here is the bloom. That's the kind of powdery white stuff that you see around it. People think it's some kind of like pesticide residue or something, but it is a very natural part of the plant. It protects the fruit, is kind of host to a lot of microorganisms and stuff, most notably yeast. They are the ones that would convert this into wine. Cut out a little cross section and look inside. Grapes that we eat out of hand are seedless grapes nowadays. They've bred the seeds out of them. Grapes for wine would have a big fat seed right there. While we're talking about berries, we should talk about tomatoes because they are not vegetables, they are berries. They grow on a vine out of a flower, just like a grape does. We cut it open and look inside, we can see a lot more. These, that's the placenta there, the white kind of stuff. And the kind of compartment around it is called the locule. And that's where the sort of gel is surrounding the seeds. While we're talking about berries, we also got to talk about eggplant, not a vegetable, a berry. And the fun fact about those seeds is that they are bitter because they're alkaloids. Specifically, they are nicotinoid alkaloids. They're related to tobacco, nicotine. And of course, while we're talking about berries, we also have to talk about peppers, capsicums, chilies, and that is where most of the capsaicin is concentrated, in the placental tissue. You know, anytime anybody like is cooking on TV or the internet, like me, and will say like, hey, if you want to like limit the heat of this chili, you could just take out the ribs and seeds. Pedants always like to point out that, oh, there's actually no capsaicin in the seeds, it's in the ribs. Well, yeah, but like you physically can't remove the ribs without also removing the seeds. And secondly, they're kind of little tissue around the seeds that can have a whole lot of capsaicin in it too. And also, while we're talking about berries, we also got to talk about green beans too. Yes, technically legumes are fruits. That's where traditionally there's a really nasty bit of fiber called the string that has been bred out of green beans that I get at the store anymore. They're all stringless. But it used to be that you'd have to pull the string out of each one before you ate it. And there you go, cut it open and you got the beans, or they're seeds really, they're the seeds of the fruit. And with a green bean, they're just very immature, which is why the pod is still tender and edible. But if you were to like let this keep getting older, you would have beans. If you let the beans sprout, you'll have bean sprouts. Sprout just meaning like the very beginning of the new plant that is coming up out of the seed. There, I think you can see the little remnants of the bean that the sprout came up out of right there, that brown thing. And while we're talking about berries, we might as well talk about the berry that's not actually a berry, which is strawberries. Not a berry because the fleshy part does not grow up out of the ovary. The ovary is actually what we would call the seed on the exterior, and inside each one of those ovaries is a seed. Dragon fruit. It's a cactus fruit. Super cool looking. And I don't know what those little seed looking things in the skin are, but they're not seeds because you cut it open and there's the seeds suspended in that pulp there. Banana. Nearly any banana that you buy at the store is going to be the Cavendish variety. The Cavendish, like a lot of big commercial fruit varieties, has had the seeds bred out of it, either like totally bred out or in this case, they've been bred so that like they'll never mature. They never get big. They never get to the point where they're kind of crunchy. So citrus, in the outer skin of the citrus fruit, you've got all of these really, really powerful essential oils that are in these teeny little sacs. Cut in half. There, if I get a cross section there, and that green line right on the top there, you can see oil sacs. And then on the flesh, you've got those little juice vesicles is what those are called. Little teeny bags of juice. We'll talk about the big one, the pineapple. It's actually a multiple fruit, so it's like a big cluster of lots of fruits all kind of stuck to each other. You know, each of these things on the outside is a bract, just like the artichoke, a leaf that's part of a flower. And the kind of dry, papery tips on the outside are actually the remnants of flower petals, all radiating around the core. And there's a seed there. Watermelon, another one of these seedless, not actually bred out the seeds, they've just sort of bred them to be permanently immature, like some of us. Moving on to the roots, here's a carrot. And with any kind of tuber or rhizome or taproot, what you're talking about is a root that has swollen to function not just as like a tube for sucking water out of the ground, but also as an energy storage medium. These little kind of dents in the side, these lines are called lateral root scars. And if we look, oh, yep, there's a root hair still stuck to the scar that it came out of. Potatoes, of course, the other really big swollen root that we eat. If you look on the surface, those are pores and used for kind of gas exchange with the outside world. Until you get to the big ones, and that is an eye. And the eye is the bud for the new plant that'll grow up out of that. In fact, over here you can see some eyes that are actually like sprouting. This potato's starting to get too old. I crack open this purple one. Beautiful little purple potatoes. This is totally natural. I mean, to the extent that any of this is natural, it's all been sort of cultivated through selective breeding and such for thousands of years, but the purple ones come from the Andes in South America, and again, it's just anthocyanin. And what you see, like the color variation on the inside is, the whiter stuff is pith. It's vascular tissue. That is just kind of delivering nutrients and water and stuff. Same deal in the other varieties, it's just the color contrast is not as extreme, so it's hard to see. All right, lastly, the alliums, onions. It's a cluster of leaves that gets super swollen, again, serves as an energy storage medium for the plant during the winter, during its dormancy. Purple onion, again, purple because of anthocyanins. Anything that can be purple in my kitchen shall be. And then of course you got your scallions here, which is again is just another kind of onion. Concentric leaves all wrapped around each other, not actually a stem. What I really want to see under the microscope is the roots. Gross, they look like little sea creatures. Well, that was an awful lot of fun. Hey, don't forget that people are putting you under the microscope when they look at your website, so get a good one from Squarespace. Whether you got a restaurant, a podcast, a retail store, or any kind of service business, there is a site template here that is perfect for you, that you can quickly customize to your needs in literally minutes. All you need is some pictures. And if you want to put an even more powerful microscope on yourself, consider the new Members Area feature from Squarespace. It easily allows you to build a site within a site where you can post content and information for subscribing members only. And of course, Squarespace handles all the credit card and bank card transactions there for you, no problem. It's literally the only company that you would need to deal with to build, host, and operate your site. It's free to start working on one, but when you're ready to pay to make it live or to register a custom domain, do us both a favor and go to squarespace.com/Ragusia and you'll be saving 10%. Thank you, Squarespace. Now, excuse me, I think I have several buckets of vegetable soup to make and also a fruit salad. Big one.